Thank you very much for coming on the show. So we're in a school. What's your plan for education if you become Prime Minister?
Well, I think education is the single most important thing that we Conservatives believe in the sense that it is the tool that every kid should have to make the most of their talents and their opportunities. And a great education is the job of the state to provide to absolutely everybody. And what's been happening in the UK over the last few years is that too many schools have been falling behind in the per capita provision. So what I want to do, day one, is level up and make sure that everybody, primary schools and secondary schools, get the funding they need. We're also announcing today something for special educational needs schools as well.
So what is that you're announcing?
Well, what we want to do is to give parents the ability, where they think there's need, to go for special educational needs schools, for free schools, and we will back that up and we'll support them. Because I think very often local authorities need that extra help to make sure they have enough provision nearby.
So what does that mean, sorry? More money for?
It will, but it's part of our overall package of about 4.6 billion.
So just let me get this straight. So you want to put more money into schools.
I do.
You want to put more money into transport in the north. You want to roll out full fibre broadband to every house in the country. You want to put 20,000 more police on the streets. And you also want to cut taxes. I mean, come on. That's having a cake and eating it, isn't it?
Well, actually, of course, as the great Tunisian scholar and sage Ibn Khaldun pointed out as early as the 14th century, there are plenty of taxes that you can cut which will actually increase your revenues. And there are ways of making sure that you stimulate growth, you stimulate enterprise, and you get more in. But what is certainly true is at the moment, Sophie, there is cash available. And we're going to make sure.
Where's that cash available then?
There's headroom of about 25 billion at the moment. And
that varies, doesn't it, every month? I mean, there's headroom because of when people pay taxes and all that kind of thing, isn't there? It varies. There's deficit in other months.
But there's definitely headroom. And if you look at the February alone, the Chancellor's revenues exceeded his expenditures by 14.5 billion.
That's because that's when people tend to pay tax. If you look at different months, then actually you're in deficit.
Well, believe me, there is cash now available.
Are you prepared to see borrowing go up?
Well, I think at the moment there is the headroom available and we intend to use it. And I also think that you can do some great things to stimulate economic growth with tax cuts.
It was a very simple question. Are you prepared to see borrowing go up?
If it's borrowing to finance great infrastructure projects,
very John McDonnell of you.
And there's the opportunity to borrow at low rates to do things for the long-term benefit of the country, then we should do them. But when there are some projects, don't forget, in this country we're spending about 250 billion pounds on public procurement per year of one kind or another. Now, don't tell me there aren't significant savings to be found in the way that we spend that money. And I'll tell you how we do it.
So you are prepared to see borrowing go up. That's a straight answer to my question.
Well, I'm prepared to borrow to finance certain great objectives, but overall we will keep fiscal responsibility and keep going with the general trajectory of ensuring that this country pays its way and lives within its means. But you can do that with some sensible tax cuts that will stimulate growth, stimulate enterprise, get more revenue in.
What tax cuts are you talking about there?
Also use the headroom we've currently got to spend on things that I think are really important.
So what tax
like
cuts
education
are you talking about in particular?
And policing. I think that we should be looking at lifting people on low incomes lifting the thresholds for national insurance. And I would remind you that that's where my priority is. And when I was mayor of London, we led the way, for instance, with the London Living Wage. And I think lifting NI contribution thresholds would be another good thing to do.
You're talking now about people on low incomes. One way that could really help them is to look at the minimum wage. Labour want to raise that to £10 an hour. Would you match that?
Well, I certainly believe in lifting the living wage, and I'm not going to set a figure now. As you know, there is a process by which that figure is determined. I thoroughly support the impartiality and the fact-based way that is done, and wouldn't want to interpose my own judgment now on this show. But look at what I did when I was mayor. We massively expanded the living wage. We put cash into the pockets of the poorest families across London. I'm incredibly proud of that. This country needs higher pay, not higher taxes. And that's what I want to achieve.
What is the living wage now then?
Well, it's at or around £10 or so, but
It's quite a lot lower than that. It's £8.21.
well, sorry, I'm talking about the London living wage. Forgive me.
That's quite significantly lower though.
Sorry, I'm talking about the London living wage.
Do you think that's enough to live on? £8.21 an hour?
Believe me, but I believe in expanding the living wage where it's possible.
Okay, now I'm keen to talk about Brexit. Number one on the intro for whoever is going to end up in Downing Street. Now you've said that you want to leave on the 31st of October, do or die. You've also said that you want to deal.
I don't mean literally that we're going to die, Sophie.
Well, that's reassuring at least.
Leave. I think that what we will face is a political extinction, and we will, and literally, I think there will be we will have a drift away from not just the Conservative Party, but from both the main parties.
So will the Conservative Party be toast?
Yeah, I think it will suffer very considerably from an electorate that feels that they can't trust politicians to deliver on their promises.
How far would you be willing to go then to ensure that we do leave? I mean, would you be prepared to ignore MPs if they try and block the UK leaving?
Well, this is the sort of proroguing
Parliament.
This is the old proroguing question.
Well, it's important, isn't it? It's really, really important.
Yes, but
we're talking about suspending Parliament to push something through.
Yes, I mean, I think what's much more important is that MPs understand the gravity of the situation and behave with responsibility, and recognise that the only way to restore trust and confidence in politics is to get this thing done.
So you won't rule it out?
I don't like the idea of proroguing. I'm not remotely attracted to it, but MPs have got to understand that it's their responsibility to get this thing done, and that was by far the best solution. I don't want to prorogue Parliament, nor do I expect to. I don't think that's going to be necessary, and I think it's far more important that MPs focus on where we are, because politics has changed since March the 29th, and people can see that unless we get Brexit done, there is going to be a continuing hemorrhage of trust and of confidence in my party and Labour as well. I mean, Labour, with spectacular incompetence, managed to go backwards in the council elections as well.
Yeah, we're talking about the reality of how we're going to get Brexit done. And you and I both know that if you are so certain to leave at the end of October, then there is a chance that is considerably less than 1,000,000 to 1 that we will leave with no deal. I just want to have a look at 3 quotes that EU leaders have said just in the last month alone. Jean-Claude Juncker: there will be no renegotiations as far as the content of the withdrawal agreement is concerned. Leo Varadkar: there is no withdrawal agreement without a backstop. Angela Merkel: the exit agreement has been finalised. This is before it was reported that you referred to French people as turds. So I can't imagine the situation has improved greatly in the last 24 hours or so. So if you are saying that you're not willing to extend and they're not willing to negotiate, then we're going to be leaving with no deal if you're Prime Minister.
Well, actually, I think that our European friends and partners can see very clearly what the answer is. And
well, doesn't sound like it from what they're saying.
I don't think that they are going to want a disorderly Brexit of any kind, and it's not in their interests. There's no reason why they should want the sudden imposition of tariffs and quotas.
So you're just ignoring what they're saying?
No, I think that possibly it's the case that they would say that at this particular stage in the negotiations. You'd expect them to say that kind of thing. We're going to work very hard to show our earnestness, our sincerity. What we want to do is to take the elements of the current withdrawal agreement, and it really doesn't work at all. It's a defunct agreement, but there are some good bits. I like the bit about citizens. We should pass that through. The money, the 39 billion, I would suspend that in creative ambiguity, wait till we get a deal, and then solve the problems of the Northern Irish border and all other borders, by the way.
They have literally said in those quotes I've read out that is not going to happen.
Well, let's see.
Let's be upfront about what no deal could mean. It would mean tariffs, wouldn't it? What would the tariffs be on cars if we left with no deal?
Well, that is not the objective I want. That is not the objective I seek, and it would be, I think, the 10%. Very, 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 very strange if the EU were to go for a solution in which their vehicles coming to the UK, in huge numbers, by the way, face tariffs. Now, there are some people, like Mervyn King, the former governor of the Bank of England, who thinks that, that would be very good, and that we'd rake in 35 billion euros in tariffs, because after all, the EU has a colossal surplus with us in goods. I don't want that at all. I think that's not the way to go. It doesn't make any sense. The way forward, Sophie, is to have a standstill in the current arrangements.
Which you need the EU to agree with.
You do. But for the reasons I've just given, I think they have a powerful incentive to get it done. And I go further, and say that actually, when you consider they have now, since March the 29th, they have a large contingent of Eurosceptic British MEPs in Strasbourg, a continual thorn in their side. They are going to want to get this thing over the line.
A year ago, when you were asked about businesses' concerns about a no-deal Brexit, you reportedly said, business.
That was not the context of the conversation.
Did you say those
at
words?
all. That was not the context of the conversation. And my words have been totally taken out of context.
Okay, go on, tell us the context.
I'll tell you. I was being told that there was absolutely no way that the UK could leave the single market and the customs union, and that we would have to stay run by the EU. And I don't think that is the case. And I think actually, if you look at my record as somebody who has campaigned for business, who has stuck up for business through thick and thin, I don't think there's a politician like it. I can't think of anybody in my party or any party that has stuck up for financial services in London during some very difficult times. And indeed, I can't think of anybody who's gone around the world championing UK businesses, driving home the message about this or that contract, and genuinely acting as an ambassador and evangelist for UK business. And that is what I will be if I'm lucky enough to be elected.
Now, I want to ask you about a subject that you have been asked about before, Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. Someone who is in jail in Iran on espionage charges, and you, as Foreign Secretary, wrongly said she was teaching, something that was used at her trial. I mean, do you feel bad about that?
Well, of course, I feel very bad about all the consular cases in Iran.
Can't you just talk about
particularly
her?
Nazanin? And yes, I do, and I feel sorry for her daughter, for her husband Richard, and I've said this many times.
I mean,
and I feel a deep sense of anguish for what she has been going through.
Do you feel a sense of responsibility?
But when it comes to responsibility for what she is suffering, I think it is incredibly important that we in the UK do not unwittingly give aid and succour to the people who are really responsible, to use your word, Sophie, to use your word, the people who are really responsible, which is not the Foreign Office, not the former Foreign Secretary, and no one in London is responsible for incarcerating Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe. The people who are responsible are the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
Can I come in, please?
And anything you do to exculpate them is, I think, a great shame.
Because I find that slightly offensive that you were saying that anything you do to exculpate Iran. Oh, of course Iran are responsible.
Oh, well, that's good.
Of course they are responsible.
Would you say they were wholly responsible?
But that doesn't mean that we
Would you
can
say they were wholly
ignore
responsible?
the fact.
Would you say they were wholly responsible?
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the words of Richard Ratcliffe then, her husband.
Yeah.
He says that your words have had very traumatic consequences for her. It was used to justify the second court case. It didn't cause a second court case, but it was used to justify it, and has been used to discredit her ever since. I mean, is this the kind of thing you think about?
Of course, and I do feel a deep sense of anguish about it, as I've said, and I've apologised, I think, several times, in the House of Commons and elsewhere. But it is very, very important that in this conversation we don't allow whatever I may have said or done to cloud the issue, which is that the people incarcerating Nazanin and others are Qasem Soleimani and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, and they are doing it illegally, they're doing it inhumanely, and they should release her and others. And I think it's very, very important that we focus on that message.
You see, it's not the first time that something that you've said has got you into trouble. I just want to talk a little bit about language that you've used. In columns before that you've written, you've referred to black people with watermelon smiles. You've talked about
in a wholly satirical way, by the way.
Tank topped bum. Can I finish,
Yes,
please?
of course you can. Yes.
Tank top bum boys, women in burqas who look like letterboxes. And I want to put it to you that you're not homophobic. You've supported gay rights. You've supported women's right to wear the burqa. But you'll just say anything to get a laugh.
No, I think if you look at each and every one of those columns or articles, you'll find that the quotations have been wrenched out of context, in many cases made to mean the opposite of what was intended. And actually, look at my record whilst I was Mayor of London, or indeed anything I've done. Look at if you want to look at somebody who's campaigned for gender equality, look at what we did in the Foreign Office, where I had a huge campaign for 12 years of quality education for every girl in the world that was actually massively successful, taken up by other countries, and which I believe passionately. Look at the way I ran London. We had huge campaigns to protect the rights of women, particularly against violence against women. And I think sometimes there is a tendency to, as I say, to take words out of context.
So I just wonder
rather
if it
than to
sounds
look
a
at what I actually did.
A little bit like someone who just won't take responsibility. You won't take responsibility for your words on Nazanin. You won't take responsibility for what you wrote in your column, just wrenched out of context. I mean, is that the quality we would want in a Prime Minister?
On the contrary, I take full responsibility for everything I say and do, but look at what I've actually done. Look at what I take full responsibility for. When I took over running London 11 years ago, the city was in the grip of the biggest recession that we've known for 50 years.
Would say I went
through the deepest. We had riots. We had heaven knows what we had to get ready for the Olympics. I took full responsibility for all those things. I took responsibility for one thing, which was the crime wave afflicting London, and I took personal responsibility for it. And actually, by dint of some very tough measures, by getting the police out on the street, by giving them the power, the political top cover to do stop and search, we got the murder rate down by 50%, or under 100 a year, which is an amazing thing for a city the size of London. And yes, I did take personal responsibility for those things. I take personal responsibility for everything I say and do. I'm just trying to say
all the good things.
No, everything. And I take personal responsibility, by the way, most importantly, for the vote to leave the European Union. I played a part in that campaign, and I'm very proud of what we did. But I take personal responsibility now for what is happening to our country, for the drift and the dither and the indecision and the failure to be sufficiently robust in the negotiations which we've seen so far. And what I want to add now is my own ability, I think, to lead us out of this mess, to get Brexit done by October the 31st, and then to do for the whole country what we did in London, which is to bring it together. We're a great country. We're a great economy. Let's believe in ourselves. I think we spent 3 years being told by people we can't do X, Y, Z because we're not up to it. We can't leave the European Union because it's all too alarming. Actually, it's not. This is an extraordinary country, capable of doing extraordinary things. We will get ready in a very sensible and sober way to come out on October the 31st with no deal if we absolutely have to. But we will get a deal with our friends and partners that provides security for business, for investment, and allows us to carry on. And then we can get on with the agenda that I've been talking about.
Okay. You've been pictured wearing a pair of socks. You're not wearing them today, I notice. Of an Assyrian king who said he wanted to be world king.
He was king of kings.
Just tell our viewers what he did to his enemies.
Ashurbanipal, well, he was pretty tough on his enemies. His great-grandfather Sennacherib, of course, came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. I can't remember what Ashurbanipal did with his enemies.
Apparently, he put a dog chain through the jaw of a defeated king and then made them live in a dog kennel.
Well, look, but
should Jeremy Hunt be worried?
I'm not going. Look, this election is by no means over, Sophie. There's a long way to go. I'm full of admiration for lots of people in the Conservative Party. I've never known a time when there's been so much talent on the Conservative benches. I admire Jeremy very much, and whatever happens, he will not be in a dog kennel. I can tell you that much.
And then, just finally,
with or without a chain around his neck.
Just finally, Sky News.
That's a promise.
Sky News is holding some debate next week. Jeremy Hunt
superb.
said he's going to come. Are you going to be there?
I'm doing loads of debates.
I'm not doing a Sky News debate.
Well, how many are? I've just on you. I've just been interrogated by you for a long time. How much tougher can? I mean, is there any experience more brutal and pummeling and tougher than that? I bet there isn't.
Is that a no or yes?
Well, I'm doing loads of debates, and I humbly submit, Sophie, there can be no more interrogation or catechism more devastating than Sophy Ridge on Sunday. If anybody who can get through Sophy Ridge on Sunday deserves a medal in my view.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.